Grady Powell, host of Forged in Fire.
Kyle Mann.
I'm Jay Warner Wallace.
Kira Davis.
It's Ben Up.
Hey, this is Dave Baker.
Carrie Pomeroli.
This is Mike Reiner.
This is Ethan Nicole.
This is Liam Morgan.
It's Graham Parker, the 50GP, and this is why you should never.
Never.
How I got suckered in.
I'm so embarrassed that I'm here.
You're wasting your time. You got better things to do.
Never listen.
Those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate. I'm Lucas Pinkert. I'm an actual Reverend here. As always, with me is the big man himself, a man who is as intelligent as he is handsome. It's Big Damn Gibson.
I take that as a compliment.
You should.
For a high level of intelligence and good looks.
Yeah, you should.
Well,
but it does allow a certain amount of subjectivity to everyone who hears it.
I just always assume it's a compliment.
Yeah, you should.
It's much safer.
I am willing to give you compliments often. I think you're a great guy.
Hey, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
and
buddy.
if you weren't good looking, you'd have never been able to get Heather to marry you.
No.
These are true statements.
Yeah. I don't know. I had a guitar when we met, but that's not the reason we're here to talk about mine and Heather's long history.
Yes.
Today,
Long and sordid history.
What we're here to discuss
okay.
is the story of little Levi Pinkert.
Little Levi Picnic Nard.
Yeah, the little guy. So for everyone,
The Reverend Baby.
yeah, for everyone tuning in,
Is that what we would call him?
We have a new
if he was in
addition.
Dune, he would be the Reverend Baby instead of the Reverend Mother.
I like that.
Right.
I really like that.
All right. I guess that makes Kirsten a Ben Gesserit, which I think may be pretty fitting.
100%.
Yeah, it's pretty fitting.
100%.
She's got some magic powers.
Oh man! And
Yeah.
again, someone you do not want to cross.
No,
you don't want to cross lightly. You want to consider
man.
it.
Yeah, for sure. It needs to be
Because she has a
calculated.
gom jabber.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right.
No doubt.
Well, Mr. Levi Pinkert.
Yes, young wee
was
Levi.
At the moment of this filming is
Yes.
a month and 3 days old. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And
And this
we-
will come out next. So we're
at
gonna
the
rush
date of
this one.
this
This one will come out next week. So yeah, it'll just be a few days older than that when this is released.
Yeah, so a month old, still not at the official projected birth date. So he was
No.
born. He was born early, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. He's a little preemie.
Yeah, and just us talking about it.
Yeah.
He was born. How early was he born from? It was a month and a half.
Ooh,
Rough. Let's just go roughly.
no,
high level.
roughly 10 weeks.
Okay.
Roughly 10 weeks. Yeah,
So definitely
before-
early
before the due
and,
date. Yep.
and a load of emotions that
Oh, man.
that I went through. I'm not even getting to yours yet.
Oh, thank
but I'm focusing on myself. in this
Tell me
interview.
about your pain.
No. Hold on. I'm setting it all up. Hold on. The emotions that I went through started kind of the idea that we were going to get together and talk about this, which is
Right.
Which is at the same time, I want to congratulate the both of you for this wonderful new
Thank
ball
you.
of joy.
Yes.
And at the same time, I want to say I'm sorry.
Also,
which
thank you.
was very odd. And apparently, a lot of people have had that reaction to a baby that's born early that leads into family separation. A whole lot of stuff to get into there.
Yeah.
But how? So you guys have experienced that at the same time, people congratulating and apologizing or feeling sorry.
Yeah, it's been really weird. And so like the way that everything went down was kind of crazy too. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that story because we kind of came off of like a really high week for us where we got the opportunity to be really creative, to do a bunch of stuff.
Which is mid July or early July.
This would have been early August.
August, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like August, like 3rd through the 6th, we were killing it. We interviewed our friends from the Tatooine Sons about Rings of Power. We recorded an episode for the Christian Nerds Unite podcast where we did a bunch of like really funny, goofy things, which really kind of got the creative juices for us
We
going.
had to help our friend. who
And
was-
then we followed that with a fundraiser that we did. We had a local like auction and autograph memorabilia house here in the Dallas area donate some really cool pieces, like an autographed poster of Stan, or a poster that was autographed by Stan Lee that has like the what is it called, the Rogues Gallery of the Fantastic Four in it. And so we
had
did like
Excelsior written on it.
and
it's
so
great.
we've got like this little QVC show that we set up in order to raise money for them. And so we came off like this huge high, and then literally like the next day after we did that, it
You
was
guys
like
had
three straight days.
small trip planned, right?
Yeah, 3 straight days of doing like awesome stuff. Well, Kirsten and I had this. We did. It was going to be a day trip. Now, from where we're at to where Austin is, we're going to visit her grandmother to celebrate her grandma's 90th, or her great grandmother's 90th birthday, right? So, huge milestone for her. Nanny, as she's known, Vi, is in just incredible shape. She's driving her like 75-year-old friends to the doctors. You know, like she's the one that's taking care of them, and she's 15 years older than everybody. So she's absolutely incredible. And so we had decided, you know what, we're going to drive down to Austin early in the morning. We're going to turn around, come back in the evening, because I still have to preach on Sunday morning. Kirsten was still singing, helping you and our worship team lead worship at the time. And in the midst of this sort of crazy like travel day, which we sort of had earmarked as like, this is the last day we're really going to try to do something big before the baby comes. In the midst of that, like our worlds, our lives like totally changed forever.
Yeah. So you guys wake up, getting ready to go on this trip to go see Mimi.
Nanny.
Nanny.
To go see Nanny.
I already messed that up.
Mimi is her grandmother. Nanny is her great-grandmother.
So
yeah.
For perspective, that is a name.
It makes sense that you'd make that mistake.
I appreciate you letting me off that hook.
Just going to bail you right out of there.
So you guys wake up in Dallas, which is where we live.
Yeah. We
getting ready to go to Austin, which is,
right.
let's call it 4 hours.
Okay.
Whether that's correct or
not.
Yeah,
that's about right. I mean, with traffic and everything, it's anywhere from like 3 to 4 hours, just depending on.
But tell me about that morning. So you guys are waking up.
Yeah. So really, like starting the night before, and what I need, like in order to really relay this story well, what you kind of need to do is set this timer, right? This kind of like almost like you would like a countdown to like a point of impact or to like a significant event. That timer for that significant event is 10:30 in the morning on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So the night before, Kirsten, she got home late because she runs a Friday night out program. So she didn't get home until, normally she's home by like 10:45, 11, somewhere in there. Well, a lot of stuff happened. She gets home at like 11:15. We start talking. She's having trouble winding down because there was a bunch of kids there. They had a really good, fun night. It just took a little bit to clean up. So she's amped up because she's been really excited. So it takes her a little bit of extra time to wind down. We end up watching a show. We're going to get in bed like 1 o'clock. And then we decided, you know what, we're going to wake up about 6. I'm great off 5 hours of sleep. She's not. So we're going to wake up and we'll start driving like around 6:30. Neither one of us can get to sleep. Mm-hmm. Like 3 o'clock comes and we're both like still wired, right? Like I really don't start getting to sleep until probably close to 4:15. And then, you know, my alarm goes off at 5:30 and I'm hitting the snooze button. I'm feeling okay, but I'm hitting the snooze button. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get up and drive us right now.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
So we decide we're gonna stay in bed a little bit longer. So we end up leaving at like 7:30. Now this hour is really, really significant, as is all of these other things that were at the time inconveniences for us. But like looking back on it, they're like these little moments where each of these little things actually, I think, looking back on it, are evidences of God's grace because of the way that the story ends. So, so keep that kind of 10:30 time marker, because what we were anticipating is 10:30 would be the time that we arrived in Austin so that we could be part of the festivities and stuff that started.
But we all know Pinkards. You're running behind.
Yeah, well, so anyway, we make it. We leave about 7:15.
Which now you can claim is because of God's grace.
Yeah, there you go. This time. So the rest of it's due to ADHD and my inability to have good executive function. But that's for a different podcast. Yep. So we leave around 7:15. Well, I'm driving Kirsten's car, so you know what that means, don't you? No gas.
Okay.
Yeah, like inevitably, when you get into your wife's car and you've planned a trip, the very first thing you're going to have to do is stop at a gas station.
Which is ironic because your truck outside the parking lot right now needs gas.
That's not ironic. I run mine to empty, but I fill it up before I go home.
Fair. Okay.
So that way if we have to do something.
Wake up, car's empty.
So it's empty. So we're going to get gas. Well, on our way to get gas, my pregnant wife sees McDonald's and she's like, I really want breakfast. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we stop at McDonald's.
You've got to start a road trip with some breakfast.
So we go to McDonald's, we grab breakfast. I start filling up the Tiguan, which has now replaced the beautiful Camaro. So I fill up the Tiguan. I go grab a couple of like a water and a soda for us. Come back out, and she's like, "I mean, what?" Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, the sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit from McDonald's was pretty greasy, and so she gets some grease on her dress, right? And so now we're gonna run down to the corner store. We're going to grab a Tide pen. We grab the Tide pen. It's not really working fast enough for her to feel like she's going to, because she knows we're going to take a bunch of pictures in it. Now the little grease spot is now like this big spot where the Tide pen has taken effect. And
clearly we need a wardrobe change.
Right. So we're about 5 minutes from home. So we turn around, we go back home, change clothes. Now the dogs want back out. And so I'm like, all right. So we do all this.
It's the whole, if you feed a mouse a cookie.
Right. Or if you give a moose a muffin.
Yeah, which makes no sense. But that's not what we're talking about.
What was it your dad said? If you give
if you give a publisher a profitable book, they want another one.
Yeah, they want another one. So, so like as all of that is like happening, so Kirsten changes clothes. We get back in the car. Well, now like our original, we're gonna leave by like 6:30 somewhere in there. Like now we're pushing 8:15. So we finally get on the road and we head down to Austin. And in doing so, we're going to drive through Waco. So for those of you who need kind of like the benchmarks, you're not familiar with a lot of Texas geography, Waco is about the midpoint between Dallas and Austin. It's also the home of Chip and Joanna Gaines. So, if you're familiar with like the Magnolia stuff, like that's it. You could say Baylor University, but like nobody gives
I was going to say David Crowder.
Yeah, some people might be familiar with it. Of course, he's Atlanta-based now. But Waco is kind of like a stopping point. And right before Waco is this city called West. And West is famous for this place called the Check Stop. Now, there was a huge fertilizer explosion there a few years ago. But the Check Stop is like the spot that everybody stops going to
every single
Austin.
Texan.
Yeah.
You go get kolaches.
Right. And so we're driving down there. We're laughing. And we keep seeing all these signs for this other like iconic stop in Texas, which is Buc-ee's. And so
Buc-ee's got the bathrooms that make mom smile.
Right. Risk it for the brisket. Like those are the Buc-ee's signs that start like literally 200 miles before you get to Buc-ee's. There are signs that are like cleanest bathroom in Texas in 189 miles. You're like, what in the world?
And they're dead on too.
Oh yeah. And it's so wonderful, accurate, and charming. Right. So as we're driving, we see the sign like Buc-ee's is going to be in 25 miles. We're like, okay, we know we're about, it's kind of one of our landmarks. Are we going to stop at the Check Stop or are we going to stop at Buc-ee's? But again, that's the conversation that's happening. We're laughing. We're having a good time. Kay's like, look, I think I need to go to the bathroom, but we'll wait until Buc-ee's. I say something. I don't remember what it was. She totally cracks up. And as she's laughing, she's like, oh my gosh, I think I peed a little. I was like, hey, well, good, good on me. We've heard this kind of thing can happen in the third trimester and right after pregnancy.
And then for the rest of the woman's life.
Yeah, right. Those kind of things happen. And so we just kind of laughed it off. We get a little further down the road and we're at the exit right by the Check Stop. And she's like, hey, we need to stop at the Check Stop. Like, I have to go now. It's like, whoa, that happened quick. So we go to the Check Stop. She goes inside to use the restroom. I go inside. I decide I'm going to use the restroom real quick. So I do it. I'm looking for her like out in the store afterwards, and I see her and she just gets this weird look on her face, like something's up. So we both go back to the car and she's like, hey, I couldn't go to the bathroom. It's like, all right. She's like, but I'm like leaking fluid. It's like, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. So we call her doctor, and because it's a Saturday, right, we get this answering service, which puts us in this place where we're like on this eternal hold. So we wait on hold for a few minutes. We've got a really great friend who is one of the, the top dogs, the labor and delivery department at Parkland, which, I mean, if you know anything about hospitals and births and those kind of things, or birth rates, Parkland delivers like the fifth most babies in the world right here in DFW. So we call her because obviously she's got a lot of experience with this kind of thing. And she's been in women's care for like 20 something years. And so we call her and we're like, hey, this is what's going on.
There's a leak.
Yeah. But we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. So is this something we need to be worried about? Is it not? And she's like, well, do you know if it's pee or not? Well, we really don't know. How can we tell? Like, I don't have a chemistry set in the back or like a centrifuge, or I'm going to be able to be like, oh no, it's separated. This is obviously pee. And she's like, you're going to have to smell it. I was like, hold on.
Which is hilarious. That
this is the only way that we can tell. And she's like, yeah, where you're at right now, this is the only way that you can tell. I was like, so if I smell it and it smells like pee, then it's obviously pee. And if I smell it and it doesn't smell like pee, what is it? She goes, it's not pee. Fantastic. It's so scientific. Like, it's either this or it's not. So
we're in the process of elimination at the moment.
Yeah, she's like, one of y'all has to smell the fluid. So we've pulled off into the back of the parking lot, and we're kind of, and this, looking back, this stuff is kind of humorous. Now, there's either this part of the parking lot that has all of the cars in it where all the people, the tourists and people that are stopping at the chat
other
stop
one,
to
there's
get
some
food.
a guy about to sniff some pee.
So all at the other end of the parking lot are all like the 18-wheelers and the truckers, right? Like I don't want to be the guy that's over by the truckers like sniffing a pair of soiled undergarments, right? Because that's a trip to jail. So like
no, officer, I'm not a lot lizard. I'm just...
like this is my wife. So anyway, we're talking, and Kirsten looks at me, and you know, our friend is like, "Listen, one of y'all is gonna have to smell it." And Kirsten goes, "My nose is stuffed up," and just hands it to me. I was like, "All right, yeah, clever line. It's not pee."
And also, these are the things that you do as an adult.
Right. So you don't know what's gonna happen, and so we find out that it's not. And they're like, so what is it?
Up, you smell
what is it? And she goes, our friend goes, well, it could be a number of things, but you could be going into labor. Your amniotic sac may have burst. You need to get to a hospital now. Your baby's in danger.
So what are you feeling in that moment?
Just, everything is like very surreal.
Yeah.
But the only thing that I can compare it to is like when I was 14 and our house burned down.
Yeah.
And my dad goes to the end of the hallway. He opens up the garage. There's flames shooting out of the garage. Like that's where the fire started, is in the attic, like above the garage. He says the house is on fire, and it's like you're just doing the things that you know you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. That like that part of my brain took over of like, we need to get to the hospital.
Yeah.
We don't need to process like how we're feeling or what's going on. We have to get here. Otherwise, like the life of my wife and child are in jeopardy. And so like it's scary.
Yeah.
Right. So we're on our way there, and we turn on, we just turn on some worship music, and we're talking. Well, obviously like Kirsten is breaking down.
Yeah.
She's trying so hard to like not be stressed out about stuff, because like that adds pressure to the baby. And she's crying her eyes out. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, we may be in the process 27 weeks into this of losing our child. And so like, it's like the prospects of all this are pretty devastating. And so we're going, and this song, and it's a song that I've always dismissed, but it's kind of played this crazy role throughout this journey. And it's the Newsboys song, He Reigns. Right. And so like it comes on the radio, and I'm laughing, and she's like, "What are you laughing about?" And it's like, okay, so years ago when I was traveling with Team Impact, we went to this church, and the choir was like all octogenarians. They were all very sweet, but they sang the song He Reigns. And there's this part where it echoes, and the chorus goes, you know, everybody singing glory, glory, hallelujah, He reigns, right? And then there's this echo that goes, He reigns. Well, there was this one lady who was like singing in the key of Q sharp, and she was just like, He reigns, like it just out of key on the midst of everything. So every time I've heard that song, it just cracks me up. So I tell Kirsten that, and it like, she kind of cracks a smile. And as we're going down the road, and we're on the service road because we're trying to avoid traffic, we've got to make this choice of, do we turn back towards Dallas and go to the hospital there, or do we go towards Baylor Scott and White, which is closer to Austin, so that if it's nothing, we can just make it to Austin? Well, that's the decision that she makes.
Because you're in Waco at
the
moment.
Well, we're right outside of Waco.
Yeah.
Right. We're in west.
2 hours?
Yeah. So we can we can go 20 minutes back towards Dallas, or we can keep going towards Austin 20 minutes. And we decided, you know what, that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep going toward us, because if it's nothing, then at least we're 20 minutes closer. We had less of a delay. We've already had enough delays this morning as far as like what we think, right?
Yeah.
So we both start doing this stupid echo, like He reigns, as we go. Like the song changes, and the mood is lightened, but it's still like there's a lot of tension and uncertainty like going around. Like it's still pretty scary. So we go, end up at the hospital, walk into the emergency room, and she starts like leaking a lot. Like there's a trail of fluid on the ground. So, and now she's really starting to feel like something is terribly wrong. Mm-hmm. So now like whatever bit of reprieve we experienced in the vehicle, like now that's gone, and now this is like devastating. So I get her.
Walking into a hospital, into an ER is a very
It's an intense thing.
It's a jarring experience.
Right. It's an intense thing anyway. So she goes and she sits down, or like I go and I get her seated. I was like, look, you just need to sit down. Like standing up is the worst thing we can do if this baby's going to come out. Like this part of gravity is not helping. Mm-hmm. So I go to the ER check-in and the lady's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no. My wife's amniotic sac has broken. She's leaking amniotic fluid. We don't know what's going on. And so they immediately like, stay where you're at. They grab a doctor, grab a wheelchair, put her in it and go. Now, while this is happening, I can hear that Kirsten's like having this conversation with somebody else in the ER waiting room, and I don't know what it is. Well, come to find out, like what happened, this lady sees Kirsten, and Kirsten is crying. She's really struggling, and this lady looks at her, and she's like, honey, are you okay? And Kirsten's like, I don't know. I'm 27 weeks pregnant, and I'm leaking water from my amniotic sac. Like, I'm leaking fluid. I don't know what's going on, and I'm scared. And the lady goes, honey, I had my baby at 27 weeks, and he's a big, strong boy now. You're gonna be fine. Again, like if we're looking at like these little moments of like God's grace, like that was just the person, just the comfort that Kirsten needed at that moment. We get in the wheelchair, we go to labor and delivery. They check us in, they run a few tests, and they confirm that it is amniotic fluid. Well, at this point, like Kay cannot like be up and walking around because anytime she moves, she's leaking more fluid. And I don't know all of the, you know, the medical jargon and stuff around it. I've learned a lot since then, but essentially like the amniotic sac is something that the baby, or that contains the baby. It is replenished by the baby's pee, essentially. Like as it's producing stuff, it goes through the placenta, the baby, it feeds the baby, and then it goes, and like the amniotic fluid is what helps the baby.
And the mother's filtering out a lot of
Right. So one of the things about the amniotic fluid that's so important is that when the baby is learning to breathe, it's breathing in amniotic fluid. And as our son is learning to develop those muscles, the amniotic fluid that he's forcing in by practicing breathing in the womb is actually what pushes and expands the lungs to make the lungs grow. So like immediately they're telling us if she's leaking amniotic fluid, his lungs are likely to be in a position where they're not forming properly. So immediately they stick her with a steroid. We get a doc that comes in and kind of walks through everything with us. They're like, hey, this is what's going on. The likelihood that you deliver in the next 3 days is potentially pretty high. So we kind of want to run down some options with you. And they start talking to us about what it's going to be like if we go in and deliver. And then she just asks us, she's like, is there anything that you need? And I start, I'm making phone calls. Because it's Saturday afternoon. I'm not going to be at church Sunday morning at this point. Like I know that they're admitting her into the hospital. So she hears me make a call and she's like, hey, what do you guys do? Like, oh, I'm a pastor. She's like, well, my dad's the pastor at First Baptist Church Norman in Norman, Oklahoma. And she's like, do you mind if I pray with you real quick? And it's like right then and there, the doctor sits down with us, prays with us. And this was the first in a series of moments that we had throughout this where the staff at Baylor, Scott and White, showed us just a ton of grace and care, and like they prayed for us a bunch. They made sure that we were taken care of, and this is kind of where the journey that leads us up to here, like where the hardest parts of that start is right here in this admittance room as soon as we get this test back.
Yeah, because at the moment you are again far from home.
Yeah, we're 2 hours away from home.
So when did that come in? It's all happened so quickly, right? You're on the road, leaking, coming in. They say next 3 days. Mm-hmm. At what point do you guys, kind of, like you said, in the moment you're in emergency mode. I need to get to a hospital and make sure the lives are safe, and then deal with it. So is this kind of when you guys start planning and figuring out how to deal with it?
Well, right now, like at this point, we are still doing a lot of information gathering, right? Because we don't know, like, okay, can the amniotic fluid be refilled since the baby replenishes it? Is there a possibility of that, or is it all gonna leak out and we're gonna have like a dry birth?
I think I asked a really stupid question of, can they put some hot glue on it and seal it up? Which
right, but like,
absurd, is there a medical version of that?
Yeah, where they can seal it up, and there's not. So they're giving us a lot of information. Well, one of the things on top of all of this that we find out is that Levi is breech. So like he is butt down, and it's a really dangerous way to deliver. The likelihood that he's able to flip over when the amniotic sac is burst is really low, like less than 3% that it can happen, especially when we're continuing to leak. We don't know how much fluid is in there. So they admit Kirsten into a room and kind of set us to be monitored. So she gets a monitor on her that's supposed to monitor if she's having contractions. She's not at the time. And then we get another monitor that is the heart rate monitor for Levi, which is basically just keeping track of his vital signs, because if any of those things drop, like delivery is imminent. So
what was the sound though of his heart rate? You know, that he was the worst. Nothing bad has happened.
Yeah,
you see
yeah.
what I'm saying? He's safe.
That he's okay.
Was that comforting?
Oh, dude, it was huge.
Okay.
Right. And they moved Kirsten in from this admitting room into a labor and delivery room, which is like geared up that at any point in time, like they can deliver the baby right there in that room, as long as she didn't need a C-section. And so we're going through all of our different options and scenarios. And what we're trying not to do is trying not to let all of that stuff like rent space in our head, and allow both of us who are pretty overly analytical to take it and to run with it in like best case or worst case scenarios. And, I think anybody that's listening knows as well as you do that you never go to best case scenario for more than just a couple of seconds. You just always are running all the worst case scenarios. And then now that's just not doing anything but adding more pressure and worry and stress. So, again, one of the things that was so cool about when all of this happened and the way that it happened is her family that lives in DFW, they're all in Austin. And so as they're coming home, they're driving right by the hospital. So they're stopping by to check on her. It's like the first night we see her mom and her now stepdad. We see her dad and her stepmom and her siblings. They all get to come to the hospital for different periods to talk to her, to check on her, to make sure that she's okay. And that added just a tremendous level of comfort because everybody got to see her and she got to see everybody. And really, the thing that's so weird about all of it at this point is like she's doing fine. Like she's okay. If she wasn't leaking fluid, like you wouldn't know that anything was wrong with her. And so that's a really difficult thing to process. When she's feeling fine, I'm seeing her that she is fine, and the doctor's like, something's really wrong. So it's at this weird place where like you intellectually you're looking at everything, you're processing information that you're given, but none of those things really seem to match and to mesh together. So we're visited by her mom and stepdad, her dad and stepmom, her siblings come by, they all leave. And it's about at this point, I've got the next day covered. You have stepped in, and I can't thank you enough for just the incredible friend that you've been, and just like how well you took things over here at the church to where I literally did not have a second thought that everything was going to be taken care of. So I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's the benefits of being basically a pastor.
Yeah, no doubt. Which is why all of that joke series just kind of started, and people are picking up on it. But so that night, like I started to get really sick. You think
it was from worry or?
Oh,
from
dude, it was totally stress.
Yeah.
Right. So like my neck is cricked. I've got a huge migraine.
Also sleeping at the hospital.
Like I can't. Well, this is night one, right? Like I haven't even slept at the hospital. And so like all of this
sitting
stuff
at the hospital.
Yeah. So all this stuff is happening. I'm still trying to process everything, and we're still gathering a lot of information. Well, after her family leaves, I just go by her bedside and we talk for just a couple of minutes. I ask her if she's okay. And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, how are you? And then for the first time in like this 12-hour period is when everything kind of hits me. And when I break down.
It's almost like your shift was over.
Oh, dude. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, she's okay.
Mom and baby are okay.
Mom and baby are okay. Everybody that's going to be here has been here.
Now dad needs to implode for a little bit.
Oh, man. And it was this huge, like this, not only like this wave of relief, but like now I'm processing all of these emotions. I didn't do anything but like sit by your bedside and cry for a good 2 or 3 minutes. It sucked.
I can relate a little bit. And I told you, a little bit about this, that Kale was a year. I don't know. We were at a Stars game.
Right.
And I'll fast forward my story because it's not about this. But
Sure.
But we had an emergency moment. I drove from the American Airlines Center, left the Stars game to Fort Worth to meet my in-laws who was watching my baby.
Right.
And he was struggling to breathe.
Yeah.
And so we got him in. He had croup. They had to force a tube down. They intubate him.
Yeah.
And I held him on my chest while they did that. And it was in that same moment. I was in the moment. Let's save this. Let's make sure he's
let's
okay.
do
And
this.
right after that,
Yeah.
the doctors left. I'm still holding him, and I just break down.
Yeah.
Because it's the worst thing I've had to do.
Yeah, and it's
hold my baby, crying and screaming, something he doesn't want to do. He didn't want to be there, but I can understand, as a father at that moment, both are safe. The overwhelming, the delay of everything, probably.
Yeah. And then there's that first wave of relief, and then it's just like everything that you've pent up for the last little bit, like it has to get out.
Everything has to be delayed for the baby and mom's sake.
And so that's where we end up. We have some good meetings with the nurse staff. They tell us that somebody from the NICU is going to come and talk to us, and we're like, okay, well, we'll figure things out from there. But they were like, within the next few days, you're likely to have your baby. And we're starting to have these conversations of like, so what do we do if we have this baby in Waco? Like, what does that look like? Because they're telling us that if he's born in Waco, that the due date is likely the day he'll be released, right? So this is like August 7th or 8th, somewhere in there, right? 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. The due date is October 18th. But if he comes over this weekend, right, like our commute for the next like 9 weeks is 2 hours to come see our kid. So we're starting to figure out like, who can she stay with? What is this going to look like if this happens? And just like praying that something, happens to where we can maybe get closer to home. Well, she's not dilated. So they're like, it doesn't look like birth is imminent. But if anything changes, we'll have to make adjustments. And so, so the next day we meet with the nurses. Everything looks good, and they're like, "Look, she should take a shower. She's had a bunch of stuff. Like she's had a ton of tests done on her. She's been stressed out. Like a shower make you
poked
feel better."
And prodded. And,
yeah.
Yep.
So they're like, we can help you out. And I was like, "No, I got it." So we go and I'm basically just like holding her hand, making sure that she's okay in the shower because she's been through a lot stress wise. And there's still a little uncertainty as to like, again, any moment, like the idea that birth is imminent.
Should she be standing at all to take a shower? Should she
it's
be
like still like top of mind, right? So I did have the wherewithal that I was like, just in case a nurse comes in, like I'm just gonna bring my clothes into the bathroom, hang on to them in here, it'll just change in here, not a big deal. So we finished that. I come out of the bathroom, and as soon as I come out of the bathroom, I hear, "Oh, hi!" And I turn. I was like, "What the heck?" So Mimi, the aforementioned Mimi, and Mimi and Poppy have let themselves into the hotel room, into the
worst hotel room.
Yeah, the worst hotel room on the planet. They've let themselves into now the hospital room, are sitting on the couch, and have just been there since I've been in the shower with their granddaughter. And I was like, yeah. She says, "Oh, hi." I turn, look at her, and I immediately like turn around and close the door. And I was like, "Honey, your grandparents are in the hospital room. They're sitting on the couch." She's like, "Okay, are you going to say anything to him?" I was like, No, I'm not. We were in here showering together.
I already did say something. I said,
like, and so now I'm like, this is just terribly embarrassing. She's like, "Why?" We're in the hospital. They know what's going on. I was like, "Honey, we were just in the shower together." And so she's like, "Just go out there." Cause all right. So cause she's got to get ready. So I walk out and they're like, "Hey, so how'd everything go?" And I was like, "It was fine. Everything's fine. Why did you think there's nothing,
pretend this never happened. What are you talking
nothing
about?
went anywhere. What are you talking about?" Yeah. And they're like, in like, "Is she doing okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she's great." And then I just sat down and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm fine. It's good to see you guys." No, nobody told me you were coming. You were coming. Why didn't you knock? And then she comes out and she's,
Do you have any Werther's Originals?
Yeah, she just starts. Yeah, where's my butterscotch? She just starts talking to him like normal. And again, so they live closer to DFW again, and they had stayed because Nanny is Mimi's mom, so they'd stayed with her an extra night and came to check on us on Sunday. So we got to spend a little bit of time with them. Sunday afternoon comes and we get to meet with the NICU doctor. Now, the NICU doctor is probably the guy that changed my perspective the most on everything that was going on, because like he had to have been former military, and And like his parents, like at 9, they were like, listen, you're going to military school.
Yeah. Look, we're going to paradrop Kirsten on
we're just going to,
back over Louisville.
So like he's very, very matter of fact with everything. He doesn't want to be there because then it's obvious he doesn't want to be there because he comes in, he's like, I'm the NICU doctor. Do you guys have any questions? And
Drop down and give me one baby.
Yeah. Right. So we were like, well, we do have a few questions. And he's like, all right, well, who came in here and talked to you so I can know what questions you had? And we're like, nobody's come in and talked to us. And he goes, that's unfortunate. So-and-so should have come in here and talked to you. I'll have to talk to her. And we're like, oh, we just got somebody in trouble. So then he looks at me. I'm sitting on the stool. He goes, may I have that? Like, yeah, but sure. So I give him the stool and I sit on the couch. It was like 5 feet away, but whatever. So he sits on the stool.
He walks in and just does a power move.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I'm like, sure, you have the stool.
You already have the power.
Yeah. So he sits at the foot of Kirsten's bed and he's like, there's a likelihood within the next, within 3 days of you guys having her water break that she happens. That 72 hours is up tomorrow or up in like 24 or 48 hours, whatever it was, in 48 hours.
At 0600.
Yeah, right. Like he knows all the times and he's giving them to me. And I'm like,
he's in military time.
Okay. And he goes, there's several risks to having a baby in the NICU. And then like goes through all of them. Like if we don't give her a magnesium shot before she goes into labor, like he could end up with cerebral palsy. Like his lungs could be underdeveloped. There's a thing where like if he's in the NICU and he starts growing too fast that his retinas can detach. I'm like, why am I finding out? Like, so these are what he essentially does is he gives us the worst things that could happen to your baby in the NICU, but are also like every one of them is less than like 5% if things are done properly. He's like, I have full confidence that none of that's going to happen. I was like, what's the retina detaching thing? He's like, oh, that's the thing that happened to Stevie Wonder. Okay, well, now we've shared our Stevie Wonder theories before. Like, I've watched that guy catch a bunch of microphone stands. Like, maybe he's blind, maybe he isn't. I don't know. That's for our other friends like Randall and Donovan and Chris McIver.
Like Dr. Villain walked in.
Yeah, so I asked him. I was,
it's good information.
He starts talking about how he became a grandfather during COVID, and that he wasn't able to see his grandbaby for like 3 months, and how devastating that was to him. And so he let us know. He was like, that's likely the case. If you guys are here, we know that you're far from home. You get 4 people on your list that can come see your baby. At any point in time, you can take one of those people off the list, but you can't swap them out. So if you got 4 people and you know that you got a rough relationship with your sister, if you tell your sister she can't come, you take her off the list, you can't replace her. Now your list is down to 3.
Wow.
So pick your 4 people wisely. And we're just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, so if this is your daughter,
how do you repair that relationship after?
Oh, exactly, right? I'm like, so if this is your daughter, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he goes, if this is my daughter, I make sure that she's not dilated, I discharge her, and I drive her home.
Hey, I bet you would have wished you had the Camaro at that point. Huh?
So, well, yeah, but this is all new information.
That theoretically you can go home.
That there is that opportunity. Everybody up to this point has said, you're having your baby in Waco. Prepare for the next 2 months of your life to be commuting 2 hours back and forth, probably every day. Like, know that there are going to be long periods of time where you and your wife aren't going to be able to see each other. You're going to have to work this stuff out. Good luck. Mm-hmm. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that your wife and your baby are alive.
That is kind of interesting that the male doctor came in and said,
hey, this guy kind of throws this out there.
Just gun it. Right? Essentially,
that's kind of the vibe that he gave after like the world's worst motivational speech about like all the terrible things that could happen to my son.
At least it was informed.
But
I guess.
Yeah, it was like, what's the old saying? It's like trying to drink water through a fire hose.
Yeah.
Like that's
so it was
kind of
overwhelming.
Oh, dude, and it was like he was in and out of there within like 3 minutes. So it was just like this rapid fire. It was like we were getting a sit rep from the front lines. Yeah, this is it.
It was a debrief.
And then he finished. He's like, "Do you have any questions?" And we're like, "A lot." And he goes, "Well, I gotta go." And he stands up, hands me back the stool, like, "Oh, I can have this back now that I'm dismissed." And he, just walks out of the room. So we We don't know how to process
Did you
this
do a tin
information.
hut?
I didn't. No, I did decide after Kay and I talked for a little bit, I went and toured the NICU. It's a great facility. And then we're talking about like what our transfer options are. Well, if nothing bad happens to Kirsten, we don't transfer. If nothing bad happens to the baby, we stay where we're at. The other option is to transfer to Dallas by ambulance. And if something bad is going on with Kirsten, that happens by ambulance. If something bad is going on with our son, then that happens in 2 ambulances because she's going to have to be in an ambulance and he's going to have to be in a separate ambulance that only medical personnel are going to be able to travel in because he was born premature, and everybody in that ambulance's job is going to be to keep him alive.
Mm-hmm.
So
there would have to be 2 ambulances.
2
leading
ambulances,
together?
yeah. So like, not only is like the whole prospect of all of this like totally overwhelming as we're running all the scenarios, but so is like the financial, burden on us as we're talking about it. Because so we talked to a few people, and the ranges are like our part of it could be anywhere between $7,000 and $250,000, depending on whether it's just Kirsten or if it's Kirsten and the baby, and like what happens, with the high mark being close to like $500,000 is what we potentially could be on the hook for, based on like what ambulance services there are if both of us have to go. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Your kid is awesome.
Like this is
already.
This is like absolutely insane that we're having to have these conversations. So
what is it? The average cost to raise a child is $1 million at one point.
Oh yeah.
And Levi is ready to go.
He's ready to hit
half
it.
Of it.
Yeah, like he's ready to hit like the halfway point, like 30 seconds after life. So
okay, making decisions.
Yeah.
On
So
staying.
we get transferred to another room. We talk a lot. Her mom comes to visit. We talk a lot with her mom. We call my parents, her parents. We talk to her doctor. And we talk to the hospital staff, and if we discharge, we are discharging against medical advice. Mm-hmm. That is an AMA discharge is what it's called. So Monday is the only day that we don't have any visitors of our 3 days in Waco. And we talk a lot, we pray a lot. We're very uncertain about what to do Monday night. Tuesday morning we wake up. She's still not dilated. And as the doctors and nurses are coming in, they're like, hey, we know that you want to get home.
You're like, what gave it away?
Yeah, and they're like, so, and I don't know. It hasn't really been clear to me whether or not like she was taken off of IV fluids and those kind of things because the time had kind of run out on them, or if they knew we were getting home or we wanted to get home and they were like, hey, we can take her off of IV fluids, like she's fine. And so there's all of these things, and it's probably a both and, right, where they knew that we were trying to get home, and so there were some things that they were doing to help us out, and others where they knew that, she didn't need to be on this. She got both the steroid shot she needed to help Levi's lung development, and Tuesday morning we're like, hey, okay, we're going to discharge and drive home. So around lunchtime, we tell the doctor that, and she brings in the discharge paperwork, and she was like, this is it, and kind of goes through all the scary stuff, like we're not responsible for your accidental death, dismemberment, or the death of you and your child. It's like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. So all that stuff's written in there, but the doctor is like, this is the part where you just kind of like, that talks about all the different things we're not liable for if there was an accident and you died. And Kirsten was like reading over it, and she's like, you don't have, that's what it covers, like just sign it, and in that sense. And we read, and it's just scary stuff, but I like the way that she handled it, because it wasn't the here, just sign this. It was reading this will just stress you out if this is your decision. Like this is what it says.
The opposite of what you want for a mother.
Right. So, so we asked her, we're like, how long is this going to take to get everything processed? And she goes, well, I'm really not allowed to give an estimate, but we can expedite it. And I'm like, good, because this is a 2-hour drive. It's noon. We have this window where there's the first rainstorm in Dallas in like 2.5 months is coming in. We want to miss rush hour traffic. Like our window
traffic has
is
gotten a lot
right
worse
now.
Yeah.
If you can do it. And she was like, okay, well, why don't you take some stuff downstairs to the car? So as I do that, I get a call from Kirsten, and she's like, hey, pull the car around. They're ready. I walk upstairs. They've already got the wheelchair up there. And the nurse who brought the wheelchair to the room was so sweet. She parks the wheelchair outside, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to grab her and we can go down. And she's like, I just can't. And the nurse just starts crying. She's like, you guys have been so great. We're just praying for your safety, and it's just hard for me to let y'all go. And then she just goes back to the nurse's station. Another nurse actually wheeled her down. She was like, this is a pretty emotional thing for everybody here, because Kirsten is so great, has been such an amazing patient. They all feel like, they've done their job in keeping her and our baby safe and alive, and we're about to do something that's really risky and driving her back to, we're just going from one hospital straight to the hospital we were going to deliver at. And we're doing something really risky, and none of them felt like what we were doing was the wrong thing. They just, at this point, are as emotionally invested as we are in this whole thing happening. So we load Kirsten up in the car. She, is able to get comfortable. We start on the road, and as we're going down the road, I mentioned this a couple of times, like as we've talked, like I did not want the Christianese testimony of like, and then we just turned on worship music and we just praised Jesus all the way home, and it was fun, and the Holy Spirit just got in our vehicle. Like I've heard that kind of testimony so much that it does not mean anything to me. What I want is that, we got on the road, we turned on a highway to hell, and I stepped on the accelerator, and nobody got in our way.
You did Texas stuff.
Yeah, but that's not really what happened. Like we get in the car, like I am again in this sort of like surreal mode of like, my job is to get us there safe.
Yeah.
Period. And so that's it. And when I say I never took my foot off the accelerator, like I wasn't speeding the entire way. We just never had anybody that got in our lane. There was no slowing down of traffic. Like none of that happened our entire drive home, and our entire drive to the hospital near where we live. Well, the song that comes on the radio whenever we get on the highway is "He Reigns" by the Newsboys. Like it's made its way back through this, and we actually did have this really sweet time of worship where the chorus of that song is, again, "Glory, glory, hallelujah, he reigns." And it's this idea that God is sovereign over everything, that he's protected everything, and that he's in charge of all of it. And as we're on the road, right, the song comes on and we kind of laugh, and then we're paying more and more attention to like what that means, that he reigns and that he's in control. And we just had this opportunity at the very beginning of that trip to rest in that. And so there was a peace in the car. It was like there was a bubble around us because like nobody moves out of the left-hand lane. It doesn't happen. That's like one of the biggest gripes in all of Texas. Like if I'm faster than you, get out of the way, whatever. And as we're going down the left-hand lane, like everybody's moving out of our way. A couple of semis were like started to move into our lane, and like I didn't honk, I didn't do anything, they move out of the way. And while these may seem like small things, these are normal things on Texas highways where you're getting run off the road or you're having to accelerate and be really aggressive as a driver. Yeah,
we have speed. It's not speed limits; it's speed suggestions.
Yeah, and there is like if
we have speed limits for those that know, but we're also Texans at heart,
but some of those speed limits are 80 miles an hour.
Yeah. So you guys are in the car.
Yes, we're in the car.
A surreal moment.
Yeah, for sure. And it's 2 hours.
Surreal is expected, but having a moment of peace is not.
Yeah, and so but it was like that for 2 hours. You know, we get to the hospital there, and our doctor.
By the way, how is she situated in the car?
She's just in the passenger seat, just kind of laying down,
just
holding
front seat.
Yeah, front seat. She's got the seat leaned back, and she's just singing worship songs and like squeezing my hand every now and then. And
what you're gonna do at the moment? She's okay.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
and I missed the exit for the hospital. So we loop around, and she's like, "You know what? I'm kind of hungry." It's like, "You got to be kidding me right now." So we went through the Panda Express drive-through.
What did she get?
Yeah, her same thing as always. She got fried rice and double orange chicken on the plate, and then she decided she didn't want to have any soda because she was worried that caffeine might not.
Yeah, she needs her strength. Moms need her strength.
Yep. So we got a big cup of water from Panda Express, and we get to the hospital, checking in the emergency room. They're waiting for us. They know that we're coming. Get to the labor and delivery room. They know that we're coming. The people in the NICU knew the situation. Like our doctor did a phenomenal job of keeping everybody informed. And then for the next 14 days, we lived in the labor and delivery room at Louisville, or Medical City, Louisville. And I slept on the couch. I was there as often. I was able to kind of do a little bit of commuting after the first couple of days, just checking people out. We did not. The only day where she was in the hospital that we didn't have visitors was that Monday where we had to make that decision. Our family, our church family, from the day that we check in, Tuesday afternoon on, there was somebody there with us every day to come and to visit her, to come and to bring me food because she was getting a hospital food, which at Medical City Louisville was really good. but she's getting hospital food, and they're making sure that I got like tuna salad in the little mini fridge so that I can like run back and forth and do whatever I need to. So big thanks to the Swans and the Walkers and the Pinkards and the Lees and you and Heather and everybody that took good care of us while we were in there. And then as they basically tell us that like every day that Levi stays in the womb is 3 days that he's not in the NICU. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at that. They've given us this sort of eviction date that's going to happen right at like 35 weeks. So they said like, right around September 5th or 6th, we're going to end up inducing, because at 35 weeks, the risk of keeping him in with a lower amniotic fluid level is as risky to her as it is to him. And so like we're delivering at 35 weeks regardless. So, we kind of got that now set in our mind. Like we're going to deliver on the 6th and we'll get to go home on October 18th. Those are our benchmarks. Well, on August the 20th, weird stuff starts to happen. She starts to have contractions that hadn't really happened before. Levi's heart rate starts to go up and down. We had a couple of signs that like maybe we would need to deliver a few days earlier, but they went away. She was doing great again. But now like our doctors come in and checked on us a couple of times on this Saturday. Luckily she was on call this weekend. And she comes in and she was like, look, I'm going to give you a quick shot. And if this does not make it better, one of two things is going to happen. You guys need to deliver this baby tonight in an environment that we can control it, or we run the risk of this not getting better in the next 12 hours and you calling all of the doctors like at midnight or 1 a.m. and we're having an emergency C-section that we don't have control over.
That sound logic. I mean,
it is, but again,
logically.
like it's scary, right? Because it's like, okay, so now what happens?
We're in another uncertain moment, right?
Right, and now we're only at 31 weeks. Well, there are certain benchmarks that we hit, like at 28 weeks. When we hit 28 weeks, like that's a much better time to deliver at than 27 because he's hit other developmental benchmarks. So when we get to 31 weeks, like that's another thing where there are these developmental benchmarks that now he's hit that will increase his struggle out, whenever he's born. So we decide to deliver, and on August the 20th, we have this beautiful baby boy who is 3 pounds and 10 ounces. That they take him out of Kirsten. I'm like at the head while they do the C-section. They take him out, and then they grab me. I go with him to the NICU. And did you have a chance to ride on his foot like Dwight said to mark the baby? I don't think there's very much doubt that this one is ours, right?
No, there's not.
So anyway, they put him in this like crib. They don't wash him, which is like one of the things they have to do. But one of the first things that happened after they took him out of her belly was that he started crying, which is a huge thing developmentally for where he's at, because that means his lungs are functioning without help. Mm-hmm. Right? Like he's able to cry. There's a lot of babies in the NICU. We've come to find out as we've been there for over a month now is that there's a lot of these kids that don't cry and that they have to do CPR on to bring them back to life after they've been delivered. Yeah. And that's I couldn't imagine like if that happened, right? So there was again, like God's grace and his just mercy is all over this, right? So I watch him kind of they wrap him up in like a plastic bag so that he can stay warm, right? And humid, because he needs
humid makes sense.
Yeah, he needs the moisture, so he needs warmth and that humidity. So they kind of wrap him in it looks almost like cling wrap.
We've talked about that. The skin when they're delivered,
right, is super sensitive,
and they're supposed to be wet.
Yeah,
so I get that makes sense.
Yeah, so they wrap him up, and then they put him in like this little aquarium. I go with them to the bed that he's going to be in, and then they kick me out of the room because they said it's going to take an hour for us to prep him, and they don't want, and I understand it, that they don't want me standing over them while they have to do all these things in order to prepare my kid, because when we came back, like there were wires and hoses and stuff everywhere, and we were kind of prepped that would happen, but I don't know how well I would have taken watching all of that go down. Yeah. Because it was pretty scary just to know that it was going on. So I leave there and they're like, okay, well, you've got a bunch of family in the waiting room. You can do that, or you can go and wait outside, because they won't let me back into the OR now where Kirsten is. And you can just kind of sit at the nurse's station for a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I think that's what I want to do. Right? Like, just put me there because I want to make sure she gets out okay. I don't want to talk to anybody right now. And I'm talking all the time. I know, shut up. Right? But I don't want to talk. I want to make sure that my wife's okay. And I want to process everything that's going on. So it takes him about a half hour before she comes back out. She's in great spirits. I tell her a little bit about our son.
That's awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah, it was really good. But I get to tell her a little bit about our kiddo, and they're gonna move her up from the labor and delivery floor to the postpartum floor, and we talk about that it's going to be a couple of hours. I go and we tell the family, lots of hugs, tears, everybody's really excited. They all come into the room. The room is huge. They all come into the room to see Kirsten. Kirsten's doing great. Everybody's, happy. They're in love with our kid already. They haven't even seen him, and I get to show them a few like quick pictures that I took whenever they were wrapping him in plastic and all this. And so it was really crazy. But then like this is where kind of the hard part for us starts, is because like they tell us, hey, look, your kiddo's in here. Like, great. We can see him in the aquarium. Awesome. And like, but you can't touch him.
Yeah.
All right. That sucked.
Mm-hmm. How long was it?
It was 3 days before we could touch him. And then there's these things called touch times, and the touch times are very specific times. It's every 3 hours because their skin is so sensitive and they're so susceptible to like little things. And they talk about it like it's going to upset him or it's going to irritate him or whatever. But what they really mean is that like for him to get upset or irritated, if his heart rate elevates above a certain level, that's energy that he's using. And we don't think about it that, at least I didn't, right? Because like, I can walk to the door and it doesn't, like, I'm not huffing or puffing. That didn't take a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. But when you're a baby,
he doesn't have the
umbilical process. Well, right, and like to process, and they've got a feeding tube in him, and to process the 5 milliliters of food, like we're talking minuscule amounts of food that he's taking at this time. The 5 milliliters of food that he's able to take in takes him hours to process, and it takes up almost all of the energy that 5 milliliters gave him to begin with. So
yeah, we don't want calorie deficit.
Right.
In
Not at this age. I mean, and you think about babies when they come out is that they've got like cute little rolls and stuff on them.
Yeah, they don't.
That's not the case.
Out. Yeah,
right?
They get those rolls, and we're all happy about them because they're plumping up.
Yeah, because they're getting bigger, and he's tiny, man. I mean, 3 pounds 10 ounces, like that's itty bitty. So, go ahead.
Being that he's several months early, what was your take seeing him? Because there's a lot of. I'm steering out of politics here.
No, go for it.
Just into the when is a baby, when is a life a life?
Oh yeah.
He's 2 months early.
Like he's grown.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a real and there was a family that was in that. I don't want to say their names. Obviously, that's their thing. But they just went home this past Monday. And their kid was born at 24 weeks. And
yikes! I know it was possible.
He's fine, but he was less than 2 pounds.
Wow.
Right. It was like 6 weeks before they were able to touch him.
Mm-hmm.
Or like we thought 3 days was bad. Right. Like 6 weeks before they can touch him. They had to take him to the only level 4 NICU in North Texas, which is Children's Medical Center in Dallas. They had to take him to Children's Medical Center to have an operation done, and then brought him back because they didn't have enough beds there in Louisville's level 3.
And they still didn't get to hold him.
And they still didn't get to hold him or comfort him, right? But at the same time, like you can't comfort him because you don't know to comfort him because the little dude couldn't cry on his own, right? And so like there's all of this stuff. So that 3 days went out, and then they give you these touch times where all you can do is take his temperature or change his diaper, and then your hands are out.
Yeah.
And you're still in, like if you've ever used a sandblaster or a media blaster or something like that, whenever you're working on automotive stuff or working with any metal stuff, you've got these boxes, and like they show them a lot on like a lot of comic book movies, right? That there's this science experiment, you put your hands into the thing, and there's like this enclosed glass case where all that happens. That's where Levi was.
An incubator,
right? And so he's got this thing that's keeping. It's got constant humidity running through it. but it's keeping him alive. He's on a bubble CPAP machine, so he's got like water going. He's got a little mask on, but we can only touch him through these little holes that we can get our hands into. And anytime we come in, we've got to scrub in, like, it's an episode of ER, right? We got a full minute that we got to scrub in. We got to put our cell phones in a plastic case.
Actually, when I went to visit, that was the first time I scrubbed in.
Yeah.
And that's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, right? Like, you got to scrub.
Yeah, you scrub all the way up.
Yep, you got to scrub for a full minute, and they've got everything around.
I walked over to the aquarium like this, like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, but so that was for the first couple of weeks. That was the only time.
For those that are listening, my hands were up in the air, like surgeons do.
So after a few days, the every 6 hours turned into every 3 hours, which was much better for us. And we went home, and that was probably the biggest, like, as far as like a family thing. You mentioned family separation. The hospital was really gracious to us. We got 3 days after her operation. And then we got 3 days courtesy so that we could be there with him. Well,
this is just like a comped room, essentially.
Yeah. They've got a small. It's still a hospital room, but they comp the room for us. But now nurses aren't checking on us every 3 hours or those kind of things, right? So we end up in this weird spot now where we're home, but our kid isn't.
Yeah, what are some of the things you're thinking of, like things you would do if you were there, or is it just in the moment?
And man, like in the moment, it was just about getting home, so that we could go back to the hospital. Like that was it. Like I want to get home. I want to get the car unloaded so that we can get back to the hospital.
So we
right?
can come back.
The first night sucked.
Yeah.
It was great. It was the first time I'd slept in my own bed in 3 weeks, so like that was nice. But it's like you left your heart somewhere else. And Kirsten and I we had to be so good about communicating because both of us were so raw. Mm-hmm. And it was like are you going to take the temperature this time or change the diaper this time? Because really, as sort of trivial as those tasks sound, they're very different in the amount of time you get to touch your kid. Mm-hmm. Like if you take his temperature,
and that's what you have to choose from too,
yeah.
Right?
And like if you take his temperature and he doesn't reach up and grab your hand whenever you're taking his temperature, then that's it. Like good luck, and maybe in 3 hours he'll touch you, but now your time's kind of over. And if you did the diaper, then you got a little more because he'd like kick you and you had to wipe him and all those kind of things. So, but there was more interaction. And then as stuff starts to scale back and, like now you're able to do skin to skin time. Well, we start doing skin to skin time, which is great. So the first night, Kirsten does it, but
what does that mean?
Yeah. So that means that we physically got to hold the Levi against us. So I would take my shirt off, I hold him to my skin. Yeah. And Kirsten would do it. And when the moms do it, they call it kangaroo time because they can just kind of put the baby's little feet in their bra and then just like the baby will just rest on their chest. But that's really important, that skin to skin time. Well, so we get to do it for the first time on Friday. I'm like, that's totally mom. Mom gets that first one, but we only get an hour. And then it's a full 24 hours before we can touch our kid again, before we can hold him again. So Saturday, this is a Saturday, I think like 2 Saturdays after he did great. That? Like he's Pinkard. He likes physical touch. Like he wants to be held.
Yeah. Well, also, you're not, I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of recognition at that moment. Or, response.
Like it was like, the puppies where their eyes aren't open.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that. Like he's
kind of making some noises and rooting around a little bit.
A little, like very, very little. And so it's hard to gauge like development and those kind of things because he's not, and we've been around, like we've both talked about this. We've been around babies like most of our lives. We both love little kids.
Love babies.
Right. And so he's not acting like any baby I've ever been around. And so there are all of these questions like, is something wrong with him? What's going on? Is there a thing that's happening that I don't know about? What are they not telling us about this? Like all of those questions are being processed. And so, we get to the second skin to skin time. I get to hold him, which was great. It was really cool. Sunday she does. Well, Monday I do. And I'm pretty hot natured. Well, they put us under they use blankets that are in a warmer to put on the kids because they need to stay warm. Their body temperature is really difficult for them to regulate. Another thing that uses a lot of energy that they have to learn how to do, we don't think about. and his temperature is elevated after we had skin-to-skin time. They've got an external thermometer on it that lets them know whether or not his skin is getting too hot in the sort of the aquarium and humidifier thing, the isolet's what they call it, that they've got him in. And he didn't do well for like the next 4 hours after I held him. And so now you're running through all these scenarios of like,
immediately it's my fault.
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And you take out, like you project onto yourself all of those things, but then you remove all of those variables. Like, no, it could have been they put 2 warm blankets on him and then there was another blanket on top of it. And you're right.
Yeah.
But that was it. Well, after that, they want Kirsten to try nursing, and we only get an hour a day of skin to skin. If she's nursing,
that's it.
That's it.
And arguably the best thing for both of them.
Right. But that means
that leaves you out.
That means I don't get to hold my kid anymore.
Yeah.
And then they told us, they're like, we'll move when he gets to a certain level, we'll move to skin like 2 times a day. And I was like, well, about how long does that take? And they're like, I mean, a week to 3 weeks. And so now I'm like, okay, putting on the brave face of like, no, this is what has to happen. We're good. I'm okay with this. But then that prompts
the sacrifice of a father.
Yeah, right. Like
this is my initiation into.
Yeah, you think all of those things, right? But then like that still, Kirsten and I still had to have that conversation later where she's just like, hey, are you okay? I'm like, no, this is devastating. Mm-hmm. Like I know that I'm doing the right thing. I know as a dad, I know as a leader, I know intellectually that this is the right thing. I know that this is the best thing for your health and for his. But this sucks.
Yeah. Like
I feel already like there's this piece of me that people are saying like, nope, you're not important in the baby's life right now. And I do think, and again, not to get on like a weird kick or whatever, but there were multiple times in the hospital where I was given the side eye for just being in the room. Mm-hmm. Like when the social worker came in, like I was cleaning out Kirsten's, the parts for her breast pump, right? Because we were having to pump every few hours to
like,
get.
Why is Peter Griffin here?
Yeah. So the social worker knocks on the door, and I was like, hey, hold on just a minute. And she opens the door and she bumps me with it. I was like, hey, hold on. So I get all the parts clean because the sink's right there by it. And then she walks in and she like gives me this stare, and she goes to Kirsten and she's like, is that okay that he's in here? And she's like, yeah, that's my husband. She's like, oh, well, I'm the social worker. I need you to know that, this is going to be difficult if you don't have a good support system. And like and it may have been like this one-off thing, right? But like throughout this process, the whole idea that like I was an involved dad, mm-hmm. one, that I was an involved dad, and 2, that like my wife wanted me there were like anomaly things that, and it kind of happened to, across the way. Like they were really quick to let me know like, hey, well, dad really can't be involved in this, or like this is something that, until Kirsten kind of had to be the advocate. And when she was like, no, he's going to be here. He's going to do this. Well, so we get to the point where, he's doing better and he's progressing really, really well. And we get moved into kind of the overflow area. He's in a regular crib. We get to hold him.
Which was funny because that immediately ticked me off when you told me he's been moved to overflow. And I was like, what do you mean? Like a church where there's too many people and they move it?
They like push him?
No.
Yeah.
And then you'd explain, no, it's actually.
So it's a good thing because they had an influx of kids. They have 16 beds there and there were 24 NICU babies. And so we got moved because he was well enough. Well, when we get moved, he ends up getting some kind of upper respiratory infection. So now like that's this whole panic thing. So like now he's like projectile vomited and can't breathe. Which and like he's desatting.
Precious calories.
Right. Yeah. And
that
so
he had to work for. It wasn't given to him via umbilical.
Through the or through the feeding tube. Like he was on a bottle at the time, and then he's got to have a urine test. Well, you can't just tell a baby to pee in a cup. They got to give him a catheter to do that. They try to put an IV in, and it takes them 5 times to do it. Not because, and I want to make sure that this is like really clear. They've put an IV in Levi 2 different times. 2 different times we were there. One, it took 3 tries. The second time it took 5. And it's not because they're not competent. It's not any fault of the nurses. This is a baby that otherwise would still be inside mom's womb developing
how big are
a
the
vascular
veins?
structure.
I imagine the veins are the size of a hair or something.
Really, they are, right? So they've got to like find him with a light. They got to turn all the lights down in the whole room. They got a light that shines through the baby so they can find his veins. They've got to be able to tell the difference between a vein and an artery. Then they got to turn on the light so that they can get it in, turn the lights back off to make sure that they're in it, and then slowly insert the IV and then insert saline while watching to make sure they're not blowing out this itty bitty little bit. Like, it's the most difficult thing I can imagine trying to do as far as like a precision deal.
And the courage and the love of those
RNs they're absolutely
staff.
Absolutely incredible. And
I couldn't do that.
Well, and their heart's breaking every time they've got to stick them another time, right? So it's not like they're doing a bad job, but obviously as the parents, you're like, oh my gosh. And again, like, we're having to hold him while he's in pain and squirming, and they're like, we can't get it into this one, or this one's not his heart's not beating hard enough for us to be able to draw blood from this one. We're gonna have to try another one. And so it's brutal.
Did you go through the emotions, the rage of, the rage versus the logic?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, there's a point at which you want to just be like, listen, all of you, there's that moment of like, all of you need to get away. Don't touch my child anymore.
I'm going to start tearing people.
Right. But the truth is, like you said, like, this is how he gets better. This is how he gets home. Mm-hmm. So we moved to an isolation room while they're doing while all the tests are being run. We get moved out of there, and we're back in our original bed now. Everything's going really well. Well, then Kirsten gets sick. So it was 6 days of that where, like, now she's not.
And we're getting pretty recent now.
Yeah. This is last week. So she's running a fever. So now she can't go up there. And now I'm the primary caretaker of the kid, for the next.
And mom.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So for the next like 6 days, like, I'm going up, I'm seeing Levi at, as many times a day as I can get up there while still taking care of Kirsten, and not being in the same room with Kirsten for too long because she's running a fever. And if both of us are running fevers, then nobody gets to go see our baby, right? Then we just have to trust the nurses and the NICU camera that everything's going to be going fine.
Hold on, wait.
Yeah.
There's a camera that you can drop in?
We can watch him. We can watch him 24/7 on this little thing called a NICU. It's a little camera that they put, and we can just see his face online.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And she's watching it like all the time.
I'm sure.
Right. So it's
that actually makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
When she's not up there, she's definitely watching.
She's still watching him, right? And she's telling me, she's like, he blew a spit bubble this afternoon, and so we just need to make sure that he doesn't have any reflux.
That's exactly what she should be doing. That's what every mom does. It's
definitely what every mom does. I don't know if that's like this is what you should be doing, because I do think it causes like stress, but what I mean, it's
the
good.
Closest thing that she can get, right?
It's
constantly being
that's
there.
good. But so I'm up there, 3 or 4 times a day, bottle feeding him. I'm the only one that's getting to hold him now. Like, I'm having to figure out how to do all this stuff that like mom and I have been tag teaming doing. So like, getting him dressed, and I want to know why it is that people that design baby clothes cannot settle on like one pattern for the snaps on the stupid baby onesies. Every one of these little preemie onesies has some kind of different snap pattern that you've got to have like an engineering degree in order to figure out. Like, there's like, they want them extra swaddled, so there's like a snap up here and a snap down here, but no two companies, and even within the same company, like no two designs have the same pattern of snaps. So every time I went to dress Levi, it was like this crazy new adventure of like, oh, well, nope, this time your shoulder and your foot are snapped together, and that's obviously not right. So we're going to start this over. But Kirsten, who picked out all those clothes, she's like, no, this is how you snap it. Well, now I don't have my teammate there that's helping me out with all of that stuff. So we finally, like, she gets over they just determined it was like a summer cold, because now she's got to do, she's testing for RSV and for COVID and for, seasonal flu and all that stuff. So we get to the point where she's able to come back up there. They give him a bottle. Well, now his bottle's changed. He's, taking in more than what he was whenever she was feeding him a week ago, because he's progressing so well. Well, now we're at this point where like, he took just a couple of milliliters. Everybody, I've been giving him full bottles. The nurses have been giving him full bottles. She can't hardly get him to take anything because it's not a regular bottle that we're using to feed him. He's got to be in a new position. Mm-hmm. And so now she's being bombarded with all of this information like, oh, you're not doing this right, or, oh, you need to change this. And so by missing 5 days, now all of a sudden it's internalizing him like, you don't know how to be a mom yet. Mm-hmm. Again. Mm-hmm. Luckily, like so this prompts another whole, Yeah, so this prompts this whole other conversation whenever we get home, where again, like, I cannot tell you how important the communication between Kay and I has been whenever we're not at the hospital with Levi. Just that,
like what does that look like? I mean,
dude, it's I know I've alluded to it a couple of times, man. It's brutal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're trying so hard not to add to the situation by bringing in your feelings. Like, so when I held him and then it took him a while to recover, right? Like, it took me a couple of days, and she was like, okay, well, they're saying, like, you may be able to hold him soon. Like, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, I don't know if I should.
Yeah.
Like, if me holding him is going to make life harder on him right now, me making life harder on him means that this is more time he has to spend not at home. Mm-hmm. So maybe I just shouldn't hold our kid. And if I don't get to hold him for like a month, and maybe whenever he comes home, like, we can start out slow, and then I can do it. And you're starting to, because again, you don't want to add pressure to this situation, and you don't want to add stress to anybody, but you start to kind of solve these problems in terms of yourself, but from almost this point of like, I am the problem, and the best way to solve it is to get me out of there. Instead of realizing that, like, this is stuff that the doctors and that the nurses deal with all the time, you just have to have somebody to kind of unpack all that emotional stuff with.
Yeah. Well, and the doctors and the nurses are there to handle the medical portion.
Right.
He needs you there to handle everything else.
Right. And so
when babies are growing, they desperately need, we kind of talked about this too, they desperately need the touch time and the
for
person
sure.
to person.
And like, one of the biggest things, and Steve Ryder talked about this when he was on our show a couple of years ago, about how, like, you need an advocate. Well, when you're in the NICU, you're the advocate for your baby.
Yeah.
Like, the nurses, as a phenomenal a job as they do, they're still watching 3 preemie babies.
And they're still human.
Yeah, but so they're not, like, if something's, going wrong with your baby all the time, like, they don't see it. If he's constantly getting his foot tangled up in one of the cables, well, they notice it after whenever they come back, and they'll fix the cable, and then they'll go and they'll check on their other babies, and then they have to go chart so that the nurse that comes in the next time knows what the babies have done, how to care for them, to make sure that the doctors have all the information that they need, and then they have to go back and do this round again. And if there aren't parents that are up there that are helping out, change the diaper and all that, now these are all responsibilities that the nurses have. Mm-hmm. And even when it comes to, like, hey, this kid, at 3:00 is when he gets his temperature, his diaper changed, and he gets bottle fed. Well, if mom and dad aren't up there, the nurse is the one that's bottle feeding. And so she's doing all that stuff. She's feeding the kid, and then she's got to go do that same stuff with the next kid. So, like, these nurses are absolutely incredible, but because of all the things that they're having to do, there's no way that they're paying attention, or there's no way that they can see all the little nuanced things that when you're spending hours a day, they're at your kid's bedside, that they know, or, that they can figure out. So, one of the first conversations was about that. Other conversations that we've had have been like, look, I have to go back to work now that we're close to home, in order to not just catch up on the stuff that I missed, but make sure that the church is prepped for when we do bring him home, that there are people that are going to be able to take care of things so that I can have a couple of Sundays off, and to run kind of the day-to-day ops, like so many other parents who are there and they're having to go to work and come back. And then the conversation is like, I need you to know, if I don't come every time you're up there, it's not because I don't love our kid. It's not because I'm not paying attention. It's not because I don't want to be there. My head and my heart are in this battle of, like, what things do I need to get done at home so that whenever he's there, we're able to just relax and enjoy having him there? What things do I need to get done at the house or at the office so that Kirsten can be up there with our son, that she can be sitting with Levi guilt-free, instead of thinking that, oh my gosh, I've got to get home so I can do X, Y, and Z. Those are big conversations that we had. The conversation about, like, she hasn't gotten to see her kid in 5 days. Mm-hmm. Like, how's that affecting you?
It's something that no mother should go through.
Right. And so there's...
New mother.
Right.
Well, mother's eventually going to let go a little bit. That's not what we're talking about.
She wasn't, like, taking a girls' trip, right? Like, she wasn't able to come see her kid. And so, like, there's those conversations of, like, hey, how are you doing? And then the process of delineating, like, everything that's going on. And then hey, do you need me to come up with a solution for this right now? Or do you just need me to just sit here while we cry? Like, do you need right now in this moment? And sometimes it is like, hey, no, help me find a solution. And other times it's like, no, I just need to let it out. It's like, okay, cool, we'll solve this problem, at a later date.
Well,
and then the stuff like with the feeding, like that was a conversation that had to happen. So there's all of these little ones, but if you don't, like, it feels courageous to hold everything in. And it feels like you're protecting your spouse. It feels like you're protecting your family whenever you hold all of these things in. I would say that, like, true courage in those moments is being vulnerable enough, trusting your spouse enough to have that conversation, say, this is the way that I'm feeling. I need you to know because I need your help in figuring this out. Or this is just how I'm feeling. I've got to voice it so that we can figure out, what's going on, or just so I can get it off my chest. And having trust that person is not just going to take those things and be like, I can't believe you would say that, or I can't believe you believe that. And instead just be like, hey, no, I get it. So fast forward now to where we're at. Levi is now no longer on oxygen. Still got a little feeding tube in it because he's taken about half of his bottles. He is taking to mom really well. She's nursing him a couple of times a day.
That is so freaking awesome.
It's it's a crazy thing, man. Yeah. To just get to be a part of all of that. It changes, like, obviously, like, when your child is born, it changes your perspective on everything. But watching that bond between mom and baby is just insane. Yeah. So it's been really cool to get to see that. It's been incredible to get to bottle feed him, which is really neat to watch him grow, because now he's up over 6 pounds, right? Yeah. So he's almost twice the size that he was before.
He's coming for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Pretty soon. Like, he's gonna be challenging dad. No doubt about it. But, like, so all of those things are neat. Watching how he's growing and changing, like, he's crying more often, he's becoming more opinionated. And one of the arguments that Kirsten and I have had is, like, how often he's allowed to have opinions. And she's like, I want him to be. I was like, no, he gets our touch times are every 3 hours. He gets opinions from 9 to 9:30, and then after that, no more opinions until 12 o'clock.
That's exactly what he gets to be doing. Is dreaming about his future, which is actually really where I want to go next.
Yeah.
Is, what are the plans that you guys have in your head for when you get to bring him home, which we're maybe a month out.
Yeah. So they're telling us right now that just like the day we should be looking at is the due date.
Yeah.
That it could happen before then, but to not set our hopes on that. Otherwise, the potential of failed expectations, which then leads to, like, brokenheartedness and all this other stuff that can be really bad and dangerous. So we've done that. We've been like, you know what, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, but whenever it is.
Yeah.
When you get to bring him home.
Yeah. So when we get to bring him home,
what are you doing?
Kirsten
What's the
called
first
me.
thing you guys
Okay.
do?
So Kirsten called me last night and she was like, hey, don't be mad at me. I was like, okay, well, this is a great way to start off a conversation. What happened? She's like, I know you've been busy, so I just went ahead and built the crib. So yeah, I'm not gonna be mad at you for that. But I think what we want to do is we just want to sit and hold him in our home. Like, as far as like what we've got planned out, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab him. We're all gonna go onto the bed. We're just gonna lay him down and we're just gonna sit there and chill. And just enjoy it until
it's the best, man.
Until he starts crying and needs something, and then she's gonna have to do something, and I'm gonna be like, I'm tired of this, and just walk out of the room.
Just gonna hang out with him, no longer from behind plastic.
I'm gonna go get a pack of cigarettes and never. No,
a reference to another episode.
So that's it. Is just I am ready for us to just sit on the couch as a family, and for him to fall asleep, and for us to. She's watching Daredevil right now. So for us to watch Daredevil, and then for her to tell me about the dreams that she has, where any superhero, and this is a wonderful thing about my wife, I've just recently learned, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but she doesn't listen. Whatever superhero show we watch, she dreams about that superhero, and she dreams that superhero comes and hits on her, and that her challenge in the dream is to continue to tell them no, that she has a husband she really loves. And it's like, it happened with The Flash. Yeah. It's happened with Thor. It's happened with Daredevil.
Batman.
Yep. So Charlie Cox.
Batman deserves his shot.
Gus Gustafson and Chris Hemsworth. Sorry, you guys don't have a chance with my wife. She's already practiced telling in the dreams.
No. I just want to make sure that Batman was represented.
Yeah, he is Batman. My wife has also summarily rejected Batman in many different forms.
Good.
And she'll tell him, lison, I think you're cute, but my husband's better than
really
you.
love the money,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I gotta pass. Well, what about what are some of your hopes for his future?
Right now, dude, I just want him to be healthy. We do a lot of research on everything that we look at for the show, and that's one of the reasons that our show has been so successful is because we're good researchers. And so it's this catch-22 when you start doing research about what happens with a preemie baby as they develop.
So I mean further in the future.
Right? No. This is what I'm saying. That there's this possibility that he was born at an age and things didn't happen, and so now he's never going to be bigger than 4'5". He's never going to be able to do all the things that he wants to do because
he got steroids and
right, exactly. Yeah, he's going to be Ronnie. He's basically Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
So
he's going to be a UFC fighter. These are the things I'm thinking of.
So all of those things really change your perspective whenever you look at it. And so the biggest thing right now is I just want him to be healthy. I want him to be smart and intelligent and following his mom's footsteps and my biggest dream for him is that he's able to grow up and to just give you a rash of crap. That is really that's what I want to see from my kid is that he's retained the sixth love language, sarcasm, and is continuing to carry that torch.
It's 100% guaranteed.
Yeah, I think so.
Both parents are actively involved.
I think we've set realistic expectations. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. So my last question is...
Oh, here we go. Last question.
What should...
Controlled rowdiness. Last question.
Yeah. I did think about doing a play on controlled rowdiness
for this. How many sticks in your baby is too many? How many times should they try the IV?
No. What should people say to people, to parents that go into early delivery? Because again, I felt this way, and like we discussed, a lot of people have said, congratulations, I'm sorry, or forms of that.
Right.
What should people say in this instance?
I think both of those things are appropriate. Most of the time, and I think you were really good about this, is that the sentiment is congratulations and I'm sorry, but hey, congratulations and we're praying for you, or congratulations and what can we do to help out? Those are the big things, because in the times where it has been congratulations and I'm sorry, that's been a little tough to hear. For it, I don't put a ton of stock in words sometimes, and so people are I'm sorry that you guys are going through this. No problem.
It's undoubtedly hard, but it's also the greatest.
But there's also
of your life so far.
that tag on it. I'm sorry that you're going through this, or something that you're having to deal with this. The couple of people who have just said, "Hey, I'm sorry,"
and that's it.
That's a really difficult thing, I think, for especially mom to interpret. And I've watched it happen not just with Kirsten but with other moms that are in the NICU, is that when somebody just tells them that they're sorry, they don't know what they're sorry for. Women like specific apologies, right? And this is a very true thing, right? I'm sorry that I put that dish on the wrong side of the sink. They want a specific apology.
Right now, to my wife, I'm sorry that I've been out here so long today.
Yeah, exactly. They want to know, what are you sorry for? Why are you sorry?
This whole thing.
Right, those kind of things. But when you leave that open-ended, is it you're sorry that I'm going through this? Is it you're sorry that my kid was born? Is it whatever? And so they start to internalize,
because it's a joyous moment.
Those questions.
It's just a lot of hardships that go along with it.
So I think
is also life a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think that sentiment of hey, congratulations, but I'm sorry you guys are having to deal with this or go through with this, or we're praying for you, or how can we help? Those things are all appropriate, and they are the same sentiment that you feel as a parent. And I would just say this to any parents that are having to go through this or have gone through it, you're man, not to sound like cliche or whatever, but your story matters, because the other parents that are going through it, like in so many things, think they're the only ones.
Mm-hmm. They
think they're the only ones that are, even though you may see 16 other kids in the NICU, 16 other sets of parents in the NICU, they think that they are the only ones that feel despair, or that feel hopeless, or that feel discouraged after they had a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. Like, we've all been in, every one of us who is in that NICU has been in that spot where it is this thing that was supposed to, that you've looked forward to, that was going to bring you all of this joy, has now become a thing that has you teetering on the edge of heartbreak every moment of every day. And being able to communicate that, being able to talk to your spouse about it, being able to let other people know that that's normal to go through. Man, I think that's a really important and powerful thing. And if you are one of the many people like across the world right now that is dealing with this exact same thing that we are, I want to just encourage you and just say, hey, you know what? There are times when you may feel this way, but one, God is bigger than all of that, and glory, glory, hallelujah, He reigns. And that on top of that, reach out to somebody. If you want to, reach out to us. Like, email us at Reverend and Reprobate @gmail.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Go to Rev and Rep, or comment on one of our posts. Send us a message. And, if you need somebody to talk to about this, I'd be happy to talk to you. Kirsten had said that, she'd be happy to respond to some of those messages. And we've found some people that specialize in helping parents that have premature babies, in processing all of those things, and in counseling those marriages, because I'm really blessed with a wife that wants to talk and that will push me to do that. Not every relationship has those types of dynamics. And so there are people that are specifically geared towards counseling couples that have had preemies, in order that, the things that happen during the baby's first few days after birth don't become the rifts that cause fractures in a marriage, because they're things that weren't talked about. So reach out, talk to somebody. What you're going through is unique and it's tough, but that there are ways to do it, and ways that you can come out better and healthier on the other end of it. So,
well, watching the two of you, really go through this. I've lack of a better word.
There's no other way to put it.
Celebrating the baby, but also going through the hardships of it. I should tell you, I've seen enormous strength in both of you in very different ways.
Yeah.
Kirsten's is a lot of it's physical. Yours is too, put in the hours and back and forth every few hours to see her and then get work done. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of Kirsten. Man. I think you guys are already great parents.
I hope so.
And Levi has a very bright future that I'm excited about.
Yeah, me too.
So thanks for talking about this. I know it's an emotionally charged moment, but it's a powerful story.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we did this is because in like 13 or 14 years, he's going to tell me that he hates me and storm off to his room, and maybe he'll stumble across this online and be like, you know what? He actually does give a crap. I need an attitude adjustment. Yeah. So there you go.
Well,
Levi,
thanks for sharing.
Get your stuff together. Dad really cares about you.
Make your room.
Yeah, clean your room. Also, this is what I looked like with hair. Hey, thank you guys. Yeah, thanks for watching the Rev and the Reprobate, and y'all have good give. We'll see you next week.